The psychology of modern dating and relationships. We're going to dive into this topic today. Let's face it, hooking up seems to be the prevailing narrative in the current dating environment. And modern dating is marred by flaky behavior, unrealistic expectations, and a wounded population seeking to be saved by another. There, I said it, a wounded population seeking to be saved by another. Now, as I mentioned earlier, hooking up. Now, I'm not just talking about sex, but I'm talking about hooking up for a dopamine connection. Did they swipe on me? Conversations that go nowhere. Sadly, online dating and particularly online dating apps have birthed a marginalization of human beings desiring of a long-term commitment. You see, the challenge today is compatibility is far more complex than ever before. We no longer live in tribes where we shared the same values, we shared the same ethnicity, we shared the same cultures, we shared the same socioeconomic lifestyle. And certainly there's a big differentiation between people that are in their 20s and 30s versus those of us that are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, because midlife comes to it a package array of experiences that's different for somebody who is in the baby making years. When men and women are in their 20s and 30s, oftentimes they mate seeking to make babies and raise a family. That's the common purpose of a relationship, is to make babies and raise a family. Not always, but for the most part, when someone emotionally grows up and says, well, that's not fair to say. It takes an emotional grown-up to say, I want a family. But for those that are emotionally grown up and they seek a family, they operate with a long-term mating strategy because there's a purpose behind a relationship. See, the challenge for those of us in midlife is that the purpose of a relationship oftentimes is very cloudy. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Is it just simply for companionship? Is it for connection? Is it for physical intimacy? Or are we doing this because we want to build a life with another human being? And sadly, what happens in the dating marketplace today is sex clouds our judgment. As I said earlier, hooking up seems to be the prevailing narrative. In other words, it used to be in the past, if you wanted to have physical intimacy with someone, you had to make the ultimate commitment. Now, if you haven't had sex by the third date, you rarely ever get a fourth date. You see, chemistry is a weak foundation for relationship success. And yet we've been indoctrinated in this belief that chemistry equals relationship success. And while chemistry is the icing on the cake, genuine compatibility is the secret to relationship success. But more importantly, and I have to turn off my phone, more importantly, genuine friendship. It rarely ever works unless you really, really like this other person beyond the trauma bonding that occurs. Now, when I, like Jonathan, trauma bonding, what's that all about? See, for those of us in midlife, we've oftentimes had multiple relationships by the time we get to our 40s, 50s, and 60s. And within multiple relationships, we can have attachment wound issues. We can have scars from our past relationships. We could have breakups that significantly hurt. And oftentimes when we connect with another human being, it's because we are emotionally, I'm going to use the word depleted. Now, remember earlier I talked about dopamine? Well, again, oftentimes we're connecting with someone because we feel a deficiency within ourselves. And we go, gosh, somebody else, if they liked me, if they cared about me, if they want to be with me, it will save me from this emotional deficiency I'm feeling within myself. Now, the challenge for many of you that are watching this video right now is chances are you're watching other dating coaches videos. You're watching a lot of psychology videos. You're trying to understand this thing called human pair bonding. You're trying to understand modern dating. You're trying to understand relationships. And what oftentimes happens is there's a hyper focus on attraction techniques to cultivate a connection with another human being, usually based through romantic gestures and psychological game playing. to create attraction. But the problem with attraction is that oftentimes it can create an attachment to another human being who isn't actually compatible with you. Now, when I talk about compatibility, I'm talking about, well, here, I'll pull up my relationship iceberg chart. If you haven't seen this before, excuse the glare. See, we oftentimes, as I said before, we see what's above the waterline, chemistry. But compatibility is about shared values. And within shared values includes a shared vision for what you want in a relationship, lifestyles that are blendable, and lastly, emotional maturity. Again, please forgive the glare. See, one of the biggest challenge in midlife relationships is our capacity to blend lives with one another, especially if we have differences with one another. And as I said in the beginning, chemistry and sex clouds our differences. What are some of the common differences? Money management style differences, probably one of the most common differences. Sex drive and intimacy needs, another major difference. Conflict resolution styles, that's kind of going back to our emotional maturity. Boundaries when it comes to family, friends, even our in-laws and or our former in-laws and that sort of thing. That can play a role into it. Long-term goals and life visions. In our modern dating culture, rarely is that ever really talked about. I want a relationship. Oh, I want a relationship too. Oh, great. You know what's missing oftentimes in the conversations before physical intimacy is context of what a relationship means to you. And then, gosh, don't get me started on attachment styles and emotional availability. I know women watch this channel and they go, oh my God, there's just a plethora of avoidant men who are emotionally unavailable. And yeah, because they haven't cultivated their emotional maturity within themselves. I oftentimes say most men are good guys. They're just bad daters. They're just bad at the dating process. That doesn't make them bad individuals. And so where's the future of modern dating? What's the future of modern relationships? I want to be candid with you. I'm burnt out on this conversation. Mostly because I teach how to avoid the wrong person, but I don't know how to teach you what I think is the future of modern relationships that is so necessary for a significant relationship. Do you remember earlier when I said it rarely works out unless two people really like each other beyond the trauma bonding? Genuine like for someone. See, chemistry gives us the false illusion that we like someone, but what is like? And by the way, let me share with you why I believe this word is so critically important. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of happy couples, and they all seem to say the same thing. I am in relationship with my best friend. I like them. See, love oftentimes is a different emotion than like. In fact, most of the time, love is about attachment to another human being, but it's not necessarily like someone. You can love a family member, but you may not like them. Think about that. That's a perfect example. You can have people in your life, family members who you love, but you don't like being around them. Genuinely like being around someone outside of the physical connection you might have with someone, developing genuine friendships. So why I'm bringing this up and why I'm having this conversation today is I don't know how to teach you how to develop friendships. I can tell you how to show up in the early stage of dating. I can suggest, creating a good dating profile so you can match with someone who mostly is aligned to who you are and what you want. But teaching friendship, that's not something easily can be done. Now, I would say if you want to be friends with someone, then show up as your sovereign being. In other words, don't show up basically needing someone to love you so you can feel good about yourself. In fact, I believe it starts by cultivating a strong inner sovereignty of self-love. In fact, if you haven't read my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work, I highly recommend reading this. By the way, this isn't the end all be all book. This is a very simplistic version. By the way, all the books I recommend are listed below. But it's an outline or a blueprint of how to begin to show up as your most sovereign self, to show up as your most emotionally mature self. Because as I said before, in that relationship iceberg, emotional maturity is one of the critical factors. I should have also said relationship skills, okay? You know, we have a population of human beings that don't really have good relationship skills. Just because you were married to a narcissist or a broken person or a selfish person for 25 years doesn't make you any more qualified to be in relationship the next go around. And we operate from this fantasy that the next person will be so better that our relationships will magically work out. We have this magic fairy dust approach to relationships, particularly women. Men don't have the same magic fairy dust approach. Men operate oftentimes in a very narrow-minded, if I'm physically attracted to this person, that's all we need because I'm already emotionally mature. Do you know the vast majority of human beings operate from a belief system that I'm okay, you're the problem. I'm okay, you're the problem. I'm okay. In fact, women and men do this all the time. The problem with women is men, and the problem with men is women. Oh my God, don't get me started on therapy sessions. Do you know what happens in therapy sessions? It's always his fault, her fault. I mean, by the way, if you haven't watched, oh my God, what's that therapy show on Showtime? It's called Couples Therapy. And it's fascinating to me to witness the behind the scenes curtain of therapy sessions where it's literally usually they're married couples, but they're not always married couples, but it's the man saying the problem is the woman and the woman saying the problem is men. They're not looking in the mirror and saying, how can I improve in this dynamic? So what's the future of modern dating? What's the future of relationships today? I'm going to be candid with you. Now, one blessing and a curse is online dating creates opportunities to connect with people that you wouldn't otherwise meet in your daily life. I'm going to say it's birthed a lot of relationships that never would have been birthed. It's birthed a lot of hooking up. It's birthed a lot of trauma bonding for people. They connect with each other. They're wounded population of people that are connecting with one another and they're bonding through their mutual traumas. By the way, when I say trauma bonding, I mean bonding through their mutual traumas. And so it's a blessing and a curse. But for those that aren't using modern dating, it's more like the broken clock. You might get lucky if you do join a meetup group or you join some hiking group. You might get lucky to meet someone who's more aligned to you, but that's not a guarantee of relationship success. I think modern dating now needs a complete overhaul. What I mean to say is, and it's something I teach in my private coaching, there's a link here to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you, is that I think it's about operating with a strong intentionality, with strong radical honesty, with real understanding of who you are and what you really want, and then vet this person before you meet them to determine compatibility. It's kind of what a matchmaker is supposed to do if you hired a matchmaker, but matchmaking success is just like the broken clock. It's right twice a day. In other words, I don't know if it's worth, I mean, again, it's, is it worth the investment? You have to be willing to invest money and know that you may not get a return on your investment. But I think modern dating today should start with vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency. In other words, with a clear understanding, do you have a short-term mating strategy or a long-term mating strategy? Now, for the women watching, this is radically complicated because men tend to operate from a short-term strategy. They operate typically based on physical traction without that understanding of a purpose of a relationship. Now, I want to dive into this because this is critically important. What's the purpose of this relationship? Well, when you think of purpose, again, in our 20s and 30s, it's to make baby and raise a family. The question is, Do we want to blend lives together at some point? Do we want to take care of each other at some point? That's the purpose, to merge. I mean, most likely merge assets and be there physically for one another when things shift, because for those of us in midlife, the days in front of us are much shorter than the days behind us. So the question is, have we built the deep roots of trust in the early phases to say, hey, I want to blend lives with you. I want to take care of you when you're sick. Now, a lot of people are opting for living together apart, meaning they are not living together. They are having their separate residence, which I think in some ways has value, but the cost of living is so much better when you merge lives together. But again, not everybody is opting for that. But the challenge when you're living together apart is, are you really going to be there for that other person? Are you going to be there for that other person? Well, I've heard women say to me, Jonathan, I don't want to become a nurse and I don't want to become a nurse. I recognize that you want someone who shows up as a sovereign being, and I'm sure men don't want to be a banker or a doctor in that particular case. But ultimately, when you get to midlife, the real big question is, can I count on this person to take care of me? Because one of you is going to get sick before the other if you're going to go the distance. Otherwise, you're just experiencing companionship, connection, and sex. If you're not familiar with my chart of the 3 people actively dating, and by the way, this is not a fact, it's merely an opinion. Roughly 20% of the populations are users. They seek short-term goals. They are love bombers. They're players. They're gold diggers. They only care about themselves. And while over here I say 20% of the population are grower builders, they seek long-term commitment. They generally are emotionally grown up. They have good relationship skills. They seek, hey, what does that say? Have their act together, excuse me. Most everybody is what I call a spender. Now, the reason why they're called spenders is they'll spend time with you. They want companionship, connection, and sex. Oftentimes they lack direction, uncertainty, fearful, usually have a dysfunctional life. They spend time with you as a placeholder. Folks, 80% of the population are users or spenders. I'm sad to say this. They're operating, and by the way, ladies, I know you're pointing the finger at men, but women are just as can be exactly the same way. If your life is dysfunctional, it's going to be problematic unless you operate from a place of intentionality. And so I've been screaming at my pulpit for a half a decade here on my YouTube channel, inviting intentionality. And as I said earlier, I'm a bit burnt out on this. I'm burnt out because this conversation seems like a hamster wheel. How are we going to do things differently is the question I invite. How are you going to go do things differently going forward? Are you going to operate the same? Are you going to have if you're going to use online dating, are you still going to have a piece of crap dating profile that isn't going to generate the results you seek? Are you going to do it very cavalierly? Hi, how's your day going? Did you have a good day? I hope you had a good day. Are you going to go in it very cavalierly? Are you going to go in it with intentionality? Are you going to ask those tougher questions early on to see if we are a fit for one another before we go down this chemical bandwagon called chemistry and physical intimacy that, like I said, it's the icing on the cake, but it can also cloud judgment. So the psychology of modern dating and relationships today, it's time for some level of overhaul. Are you going to be part of that? Are you going to make changes in your life? How are you going to date and connect with people? I hope you do. I hope you operate with a lot more sovereignty. I hope you operate with a lot more emotional intelligence, self-love. And because here's the bottom line, if you don't mate with someone, this journey called life is still a much an individual journey. It's about cultivating the kind of life where you're at peace with yourself. And maybe if you're lucky and you're in that state of peace with yourself, you become a magnetic attractor for someone else who's at peace with themselves. And you can find that you might be able to go on this journey co-creating something together instead of wasting each other's time. Hey, is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know if it is. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, where you can have direct access to me on a regular basis. You can follow me on social media. You can get my dating vows, which is linked below, and you can follow, what else? Oh, and you can get all the books I recommend under Jonathan Recommend Books. All right, those who know my live format know it's time for Q&A. If you have a question, there's a little chat box in the corner. Write the word question, then post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him right there. This was a picture we took shortly before he passed away in his honor. We donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and scholarships to coaching as well. And our goal today is $50, so it appreciates some love for the Connor Asley Scholarship Fund. All right, some of the people have already jumped in and said, Janet says, I so get Jonathan on the burnout. You're spot on this conversation. Yeah, I mean, it's natural to feel burnt out. I mean, how many of us have had multiple conversations with people that go nowhere? I mean, it's almost demoralizing. You know, and again, there's such trivial conversations, especially when you start with something. I know an icebreaker is, how's your day going? But do you really care about my day? I mean, do you really, like when someone writes to you, how's your day going? And I go, look, I had a really shitty day. I had a client that was annoying. I had you know, some tech problems with my, you know, email marketing system. I mean, do you really want to hear about my day? Do you really want to hear about those things? Or it's like, my day's okay. And then someone says, how's your day? Okay. And then you're flat. I mean, I know it's an icebreaker, but start with something of depth. Start with something with curiosity. Ask a question about their profile. Ask something about them outside of how's your day going? Anyway, I appreciate that. Florence says, why is it almost always 99% female audience? Men need to hear this stuff too. By the way, I also have a men's channel. And so this broadcast is also broadcast on my men's channel. So, you know, women tend to seek more relationship advice than men do. Men tend to want to learn more confidence building advice centered around building confidence and meeting women, because a lot of men have a fear around meeting women, and women want to understand relationships more. That's kind of the way I've interpreted it. By the way, does anyone want to join me live right now on the Love Seat? I would love to chat with someone live right now. I just posted a link. You can put that in your search bar, and you can cut and paste that. And you can connect with me live right now. We can have a conversation. You know why I want to have a conversation with someone? Let's talk about this. Let's start talking from a heart-centered place of what's really happening, not from a place of judgment, not from the place of men are wrong and women are wrong, but let's come from a place of how can we solve this problem? How can we operate differently? And maybe during this conversation, we might uncover the meaning of life in all of this, all of the juicy benefits. So again, I posted a link right there. Okay. We have someone wrote in, yes, it does resonate with me. Most men tell me they're looking for company or a friend. Now, if men are saying to you they're looking for a friend, that's actually a good thing. As I said earlier in this conversation, some of the most successful relationships are with those who you have a genuine friendship. You genuinely like this person. Now, you can be with someone you don't dislike, but to have that intangible of like, you know, It's a very rare thing to have that intangible. And I also believe, you know, feelings around a relationship are it's an intangible. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to my son Colin. That's a picture of him right there. We were talking about someone he dated some years ago. Let me tell you, his mother and I loved this girl. She was attractive. She was getting her master's in speech psychology. She came from a good family. Not that that matters, but you know, I mean, she just seemed like she had her act together, and we loved her. And Colin dated her for about 5 months. But about 3 months in, he came to me. He said, "Dad, I'm just not feeling it with her. I'm just not feeling it." And I said, "Well, give it a little more time," because I'm like, you know, and he liked her. They had great time together. They had a lot in common, but there's an intangible to love. Now, oftentimes that intangible is our insecure attachment. And so most likely she wasn't triggering his insecure attachment. If you're not familiar with the book, Wired for Love by Dr. Stan Tatkin, I highly recommend checking this out. Okay. But she probably didn't trigger his attachment wound, which we oftentimes think is love. Many of us believe insecure attachment is love. And I am guilty of this. Many of you know who followed my channel. I share publicly that my default attachment style is anxious. Anxious tends to be a little bit more needy. Anxious tends to be a little more codependent, whereas an avoidant tends to be more counter dependent, and they also tend to be emotionally stifled or constipated. In other words, they're not overly expressive on an emotional level. But coming back to my son, you know, he said I wasn't feeling it. And, you know, whether we like it or not, there is this intangible that makes us go, I want you, outside of that physical desire for sex. There's something, you know, again, sex for us men, it's like shark at a feeding frenzy. The minute we smell blood, we go after it. You know, there's pheromones and hormones and, you know, dopamine, that's a rush. But ultimately, there's this intangible that isn't chemical based. And I believe that can be one of the problematic issues. I've had women who are they're into me. I'm just not into them. I've had women that I'm into, they're not into me. There's this intangible that, you know, do you know why they call it dating? Because holy fucking shit, trying to figure out another human being was taken in the dictionary. So they replaced it with the word dating. Okay. All right. Rhonda's in the house. Jonathan, do you believe healthy relationships happen after your inner child healing? Well, I think inner child healing helps with emotional maturity and relationship skills, okay? And I believe when you have emotional maturity and good communication and relationship skills, that's certainly on the way. But, you know, you could have somebody that has good communication skills, emotional maturity, and still be deeply wounded from the past that could block them from loving someone. I think unprocessed grief or betrayal, internalized belief systems, I'm not lovable, could play a factor into it. I think early attachment wounds can play a factor in it. So yes, you can, again, I believe that healing prepares you to be in a relationship, but even if you've done work, doesn't guarantee your compatibility with another person. But Rhonda, great question. Hey, anyone wants to join the love seat? I just posted a link right there, and let's have a conversation. Okay, I've got some questions that came in. Question came in. Jonathan, I'm dating someone who says they're not ready for a serious relationship, but they still want to see me. Should I be patient or move on and protect my heart? You know, what does I'm not ready for a serious relationship mean? Most likely the question is, Do you want a fully committed relationship, a partnership where you live together and you take care of each other? Do you want that? Because that's ultimately what a serious relationship is. I think we have to be very careful with people who are not committed to commitment. Someone write that in the chat box. Committed to commitment. Are you, by the way, you can say, you can keep seeing this person. You know, you could keep seeing this person and be patient. I just wouldn't have sex with them until they are committed to commitment. And again, this is where, you know, like this is where a lot of men, they will push, they will, you know, love bomb you, romance you early on, and then say, let's take it slow. The minute you have sex with a man and then he says, let's take it slow, is oftentimes code for, I'm not sure I'm really that into you, and I don't want to create a false expectation of this dynamic. I don't want to create a false expectation of this dynamic. So I would just be mindful of that. I don't like the idea of protecting my heart, though. I don't like the idea. I don't think it's about protecting your heart. I think it's about not giving your heart to someone who hasn't earned it. But if you operate from a protection mechanism, I don't think that's healthy either. So that's a great question that was asked. Okay. Victoria just posted it here. Committed to commitment. You know, I'll be candid with everyone. I'm not in the best place in my life right now. The ground underneath me doesn't feel, solid. But I am, if a unicorn fell in my lap kind of thing, which I doubt that'll happen. I am committed to commitment. I am committed to the process to determine, are we compatible with one another? In other words, I'm committed to the process of determining, are we compatible with one another through shared activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, intimacy. Now, physical and emotional intimacy. I'll be candid with you. Sex is part of the decision-making process to be in a committed relationship. I think it's best to wait to have physical intimacy, to not start with physical intimacy, to build some level of friendship first. I believe that's a healthier approach. By the way, now there are plenty of people who have had sex on a first date and they're happily married. So I'm not suggesting that, you know, I'm here to be the police on this. But I think the real question is somebody committed to commitment? And when somebody says, I'm not looking for a serious relationship, then they're not committed to commitment. I think a person who's committed to commitment says, I want a serious relationship. I don't know if that's with you. I'm willing to explore this. I'm willing to explore a relationship with you, especially since I want to have physical intimacy with you. I don't know if you're the one yet, but I'm committed to the process. But when someone says, I'm not looking for a serious relationship, you're rolling the dice with someone like that because they're not committed to commitment. All right, if you have a question, write the word question or purchase the super sticker, super chat, or join me on the love seat right now. I'd love to have a conversation with you. All right. Next question that came in. Jonathan, I met a few good men lately, but none of them seem ready to commit. Why are so many men over 50 so hesitant to go all in? Great question. Well, I think people are gun shy. You know, when you've invested, especially if you got married and it didn't work out, you know, or especially if there was a contentious divorce, especially if you're paying alimony, child support, that sort of thing, you're battling visitation rights. I think a lot of people could be gun shy for full-blown commitment. As I said earlier, what's the purpose of a relationship? I think ultimately do you want to blend lives together? Do you want to support each other financially? And do you want to take care of someone when they get sick? That's the ultimate purpose. I mean, other than then all we're doing is let's have a good time. Let's focus on have a good time. Let's just have a good time. Dating advice is hyper focused on attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection without the real understanding of why are we doing this? You know, remember the wedding vows for richer, for poorer, sickness and health, death do us part. There was a reason why there was this commitment, because ultimately you're choosing to invest in someone where one of you is going to end up having to take care of the other person, unless you're lucky and you die both at the same time. Anyways, that's my perception anyway. Rhonda comes back and says, Jonathan, I appreciate you sharing your vulnerability here. You were being human. By the way, if you have a personal question of me, anyone who's watching this right now, you're more than welcome. I'll do my best to answer any personal questions as well. Katie is in the house. Jonathan, is it okay to have some good days and some bad days? Just embrace the bad days and let yourself move through it however you want. Look can imagine this. You're having a good day. You've connected with someone on a dating app and you've started a dialogue with them. And then the next few days, you're just having a bad day. Maybe Mercury is in retrograde. Maybe the planet Saturn is crossing Jupiter or something like that, and you're having a bad day. And now you have to pretend to be up, because we're not willing to be vulnerable right from the very get-go. I've had women write me and she says, how's my day going? And I've led with, I'm having a bad day. I'm like, look, you've asked the question, then you better be prepared for the real answer, because our life has highs and lows. We tend to date with this hyper focus on the highs, and it's not attractive to have the low. It's not attractive to show your vulnerable side. And the vast majority of humans are actually spend more time in emotional pain than they do emotional pleasure, unless they're chasing pleasure. But those chasing pleasure is just a short-term fix to a long-term problem. Okay? Is this sinking in? Hey, folks, is this sinking in? Is this resonating? By the way, a client got me this. Please let me know. Victoria is back in the house. Why is it a red flag for men when a woman has male friends? I seem to run across that. I have some great positive male friendships. Well, okay, this is a complex question. Let's unpack this for a second. Now, to a man that believes that's a red flag is different than a deal breaker. Red flag means ask more questions. So what their concern might be is that these male friends, want to have sex with this woman. That's one concern a man might have, is these male friends might want to have sex, and they're going to constantly be pushing boundaries in that regard. Now, here's the thing. If a woman has multiple male friends, that's different than having one or two good male friends, okay? I have a very dear friend of mine, Tammy. She lives with a man. They've been in a relationship for 7 years. She's probably my best friend. We talk frequently. We never dated romantically, nor have we ever kissed or had sex, okay? But she's my dearest friend. It's built over a long period of time, okay? And her partner, totally okay with it, okay? Because I have no designs to push the boundary of sexual connection. Now, if a woman has lots of male friends, I'd be curious to wonder if she has some level of insecurity with her, that she needs constant validation from other men. That might be one thing. Now, I also believe if a woman, like in the case of my friend Tammy, I've met her partner before. So I think it's important to introduce a male friend to somebody in your life. I'm still dear friends with my ex-relationship of 6 years. And my relationships, any future woman in my life or any woman that's been in my life has met my dear friend. So again, I do agree that male friendships, just like female friendships, can have a positive influence in our life. But again, if a woman has lots of male friends, I'd be a little bit curious about that. If they have one or two solid male friendships, then I would say that your new partner needs to meet this person. But again, the red flag for a man is he's concerned that that man might have sexual designs on his partner and constantly be pushing boundaries. Okay. That was a great question. I really appreciate that. So thank you, Victoria. Okay. Let's see what else we have. Okay, if you have a question, write the word question, then post the question thereafter. Okay, another question came in earlier. Jonathan, I love my partner deeply. I love my partner deeply, but our lifestyles and even our values don't totally match. Can love really overcome that, or am I setting myself up for heartbreak? Well, when you say you love him deeply, my concern is, do you have a strong attachment to a person? Because if you don't share the values and your lifestyles are different, that's going to be problematic. So then you need good, healthy communication skills and conflict resolution skills to navigate this. But ultimately, what's your shared passion in your life? If you don't have a shared passion, if your values are different than theirs, it's going to be problematic if you don't share a core passion together outside of physical intimacy and going to, like, what's your shared passion that you look forward to doing together on a regular basis outside of sex? Without that, it's going to be most likely very problematic. Does that mean it's not going to work? No, that's not a guarantee. You don't have to be 100% aligned, but you do need a shared passion, and you need that shared purpose of saying, I want to blend lives with you someday, and I want to take care of you someday. And quite frankly, if your lifestyles aren't blendable, it's going to be problematic in the long run. So great question. Thank you so much for that. Jack is in the house. We've got a man here. I resent that no one liked me when I was fat. It's a shame that we have to lose weight to earn love. Well, resentment on your part is, I am sure, Jack, you have met women you have not been attracted to for whatever reason that has nothing to do with looks. So I understand that the shame, you might have felt. But to resent someone for not liking you, everybody's entitled to their own choice, Now, being overweight, a lot of people don't want to date people that are overweight because it's a health concern, and they don't want to invest in someone who doesn't invest in their health, So now, but then again, to lose weight, if you're losing weight to be attractive to the opposite sex, then are you really doing it for your own regard? And you go on to say, Jack comes on to say, why should I date when porn is free? Well, if masturbation satisfies you, then you don't have to date whatsoever. The question is, do you want to build a life with someone? Do you want to have physical intimacy outside of your left or right hand? Left or right hand. I get that. And porn is actually stimulate. By the way, men who are addicted to porn oftentimes can't have physical intimacy with a woman because they are so used to a gorilla grip to get themselves off. Again, I invite you to really examine your life at a deeper level because you carry resentment and you believe porn is a substitute. And if that's what you choose, listen, if you want to have resentment, there's nothing wrong with that. You're entitled to that emotion. If you want to masturbate, as your way for physical pleasure, there's nothing wrong with that. And you go on to say masturbation is better than a bad relationship. Most relationships are bad. Then you can go your own way. You can do whatever you want. I'm kind of curious why you're on my channel right now. Like, what do you want? Like, what do you want, Jack? Like, do you want a woman in your life? Is that something you want? Then what are you going to do to cultivate that? Like, that's my invitation for you, Jack. If you want a woman in your life, what are you going to do to cultivate that for yourself? By the way, Jack, why don't you join me on the love seat right now, the hot seat in your case, and let's have a conversation. Are you willing to be brave enough to talk to everybody right now? I'm willing to talk to you about this. I just posted a link right there. I mean, and by the way, porn gets old. I mean, well, actually, to some degree, there's so much variety, but I believe there's more to life than just a solo journey. I believe we cultivate a more enriching life when we engage with other people. I mean, I recognize you're doing life in solitude. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm here to invite you to look at this differently. Look at Terry says, yes, Jack. In other words, why don't you jump on? Girl says, how do you know? How would he know that most relationships are bad when he just admitted that he hasn't been picked? That's a good point. That's a good point. Like, how do you know that they're bad? You're probably consuming a lot of content in the YouTube universe that is always pointing the problem at women. And I get it. You can have a belief system that the problem is women, but I invite you to look inward and ask yourself, what do you really want? And when you operate from a place of resentment and self pleasure, you're not. I'm just suggesting to you, there's more enrichment to life than just operating that way. Terry says exactly. Victoria wants to come on and say, sounds like Jack needs some healing from the past. I would venture to say that's true. Jack, why don't you join the love seat right now? Why don't we have a little conversation about this? Okay. Are you willing to put yourself on the line here and say, I am ready to maybe have a shift in perspective? That's all I'm here to help people do, is have a shift in perspective. Listen, there's nothing easy about the dating marketplace. Look, I get it. It can be very disappointing to feel rejected because of our weight. I'm going to tell you something. Women have that same concern. In fact, body image issues tends to be one of the greatest issues women face today, particularly at midlife. That tends to be one of the biggest blocks to love. So I understand where you're coming from, but I also think it's time to heal that, Jack. I think it's time to go, you know what? I'm going to move past this. I'm going to move past this. And I'm going to make a note here. And I'm inviting you to do that, Jack. I'm inviting you to do inner work to say, you know what? I don't want to live like this anymore. Just sitting in front of masturbating on the small screen. I'm inviting you to say, because by the way, physical intimacy with a woman is so awesome, It really is. It's a lot more fun than your left or right hand. Anyway, that's my opinion, Jack. And if you jump on the screen, we can talk about that as well. Folks, how did you feel about what I just shared with Jack? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Did that resonate with you, what I just shared? If it did, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. And again, if you want to connect with me, schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. And coming back to what Victoria said, it sounds like Jack needs some healing from the past. I would agree. And I want to finish this one more thought with you, Jack, is that it's difficult to look inward. It's difficult to look inward. It is so much easier to blame everyone else instead of looking in the mirror. But I'm going to tell you something. When you look in the mirror deeply and say, I can change my life, I can change my life, you're going to begin to operate with hopefully more success. Okay. Thanks, Jack. We appreciate you. All right. Let's see. KT asked me a personal question. Would you go on a healing month-long retreat to completely get off social media and apps? You know, I vacillate between going off to a retreat. I vacillate between that. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to do it, and there's a part of me that's afraid. I can't tell you why I'm afraid. I don't know. You know, I'm doing a 4-day I'm going camping next week for 4 days. I'm going to detox from social media and stuff like that. I'm going to a 4-day spiritual retreat. I just don't know if I'll do a month. But who knows? That might be in the forecast for me as well. Michelle wants to tell Jack, turn around your attitude, you'll get the ladies. If you want us, and she says, LOL. But to some degree, our attitude makes a big difference. So in that case, Jack, I would agree with what she has to say. Okay. Rhonda wants to come in and say, hello, Jack. Self-healing is crucial to loving yourself and opening yourself up to receiving love, the love you deserve. Yeah. Self-healing is crucial to loving yourself and opening yourself up to receiving love, the love you deserve. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine how difficult, like I would want to examine what caused you to put the weight on to begin with, to examine what put the weight on to begin with. And then examine what was your motivation to losing the weight. But to resent women for, listen, human beings are radically judgmental. I mean, and I guarantee you, Jack, you've been judgmental to women too. You've already got a judgment, an attitude towards women as it is. So if you can't examine that part of yourself, then all you're doing is shedding the blame, to someone else. I hope you're finding value in this. I hope you go look in the mirror and say, I can change my life, not from a egoic point of view that the YouTube universe is selling you, the Andrew Tates of the world that are selling you. Because I will tell you this, I mean, go to a therapist, go to a counselor, go to a coach, go to a retreat center, do some inner work, because you might find that you'll have more joy in your life if you do that. Okay. Is this sinking in, everybody? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what I just shared with Jack. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, where you can have regular access to me on a regular basis. You can join my group called I'm repeating myself. Get My Dating Vows, all the books I recommend listed below. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Barrick of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow, and give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. I want to thank Rhonda and G, and I want to thank Jack, and I want to thank Terry. And I want to thank Papa Tatia and Victoria and KT and everybody who joined in today. I really do appreciate you all. Wishing you all a super duper wonderful day. Be well. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.